I can't be the only one who thinks Arman isn't that clear of a number one contender. Now, don't get me wrong, he's the most interesting fight for Ilya, in my opinion, but that doesn't make him a clear number one contender. Ilya has already knocked out Charles Oliveira, I understand. But in the time that Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira have fought, Arman Tsarukyan has beaten Dan Hooker. Charles Oliveira has beaten Michael Chandler, again, on the same level as Dan Hooker, in my opinion. He's lost to Ilya Topuria, which kind of does put him back a little bit. But then he's submitted Gamrot. You know Gamrot, the guy who beat Arman, the guy who Arman turned down a rematch for in the same time since he's last fought. And who else has he beaten? Max Holloway, the guy who, if he had beaten Charles Oliveira, arguably, in my opinion, would have been the number one contender over Arman. Now, I like the Arman fight because that's a good stylistic matchup to test Ilya a little bit, and we haven't seen the fight before. But in terms of pure merit, in terms of pure resume, Arman in the past almost 2 years, when was UFC 300? Since UFC 300, he's only fought Dan Hooker, and at UFC 300, he beat Charles Oliveira by a razor close decision where Charles put him in more danger than Arman put him into, and Charles has looked to have been more improved in that time than anything we've seen from Arman, because all we've seen from Arman is, let's actually go through it. Tony Ferguson, we're going to see him wrestle Tony Ferguson. We're going to see him wrestle another wrestling influencer. We saw him wrestle a 90-year-old retired Uriah Faber, who he had like 9 million pounds over. We see him, the Giorgio rematch. Giorgio, who is a YouTube, who is an influencer wrestler. We saw him wrestle a flyweight. We saw him wrestle Giorgio again. And then in that fight afterwards, he didn't do good enough, or as good as he thought he would, had a harder time. So he had to rage out after. We saw him go to a draw, which I know was only a draw because it was purely submissions. But we saw him go to a draw with Shara Magomedov, no grappling middleweight. Then who else have we seen? He had some good wrestling wins, but again, that's outside of the sport. Then he had Dan Hooker. Then he wrestled Benson Henderson. Old man Benson Henderson. Saw him wrestle Patricky Pitbull. I don't even know who this is. He wrestled that guy. Charles Oliveira. By the way, we're in May of 2026. Charles Oliveira in April 13th of 2024. And let's look at the rest of his resume. His only other ranked win, Beneil Dariush. His resume in the past 3 years is Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, good win, razor close though, and Dan Hooker. You can't tell me that's some nightmare matchup for Ilya. You can't tell me that's some guy who just doesn't deserve anything but an Ilya Topuria fight. And I can't believe, really, I'm going to be honest here. The only people that are rooting for an Arman title shot as hardly, because don't get me wrong, I want the Arman title shot because I just want to get it done with. It'll be a hyped up, interesting fight. The only people who are pretending that Arman is some sort of nightmare matchup for Ilya are the Islam fans. They're not actual Arman fans. They're Islam fans who want the guy that Islam beat to beat Ilya, so then they can say that Islam doesn't have to fight Ilya. Not that they're scared of the fight or anything, but because they want that win over Ilya, a guy who's trash talking their favorite fighter. And I understand that. I understand that completely. But that doesn't change the fact that Arman's resume is not that elite. He's had good wrestling wins, okay wrestling wins, really. I know he had the big win over Lance Palmer, but that's an older retired Lance Palmer. Not as good as a lot of people made it seem. Giorgio Pulas did better against Arman than Lance Palmer did. Muhammad Mokaev, arguably, I know it was a submission grappling match, arguably did better in the grappling than Lance Palmer did. Uriah Faber didn't do better, but still, I don't know. I just feel like Arman's resume is not as good as it's cracked up to be. He's been spending all this time turning down fights in the UFC so he can wrestle Tony Ferguson, Uriah Faber, flyweight Muhammad Mokaev, while turning down guys like Gamrot because he's already, in his mind, beat them or he's above them. So in his mind, is he not above Tony Ferguson? Does he see Arman, or does he see the Gamrot fight as too much of a risk for him to take because he sees himself as above Gamrot? If he thinks Gamrot would be an easy win, which it should be if he's going to be beating Ilya Topuria, he should just take that Gamrot fight, and his resume would be so much better. He would then officially have a win over Gamrot, a guy who's always game. He'll have that win over Charles Oliveira, even though it was razor close. He'll have that win over Dan Hooker. His resume would be a lot better if he just took one more fight, got one more ranked win, because no one respects a Beneil Dariush win. No one respects a Dan Hooker win, especially if you're a top contender. And he kind of did it in the same fashion that Benoit Saint Denis did. Same round by wrestling, got him to the ground. Not that different of a win, actually. Besides, Dan kind of hurt BSD with a body kick earlier on. But besides that, it was all BSD. BSD did just about the same damage with the ground and pound. So really, outside of that, it's just the Charles Oliveira win, which a lot of people thought, and I think they'd be wrong to think, but a lot of people thought that Charles Oliveira won that fight. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I just don't see Arman as that clear of a number one contender. Now let's look at Charles Oliveira's record. Let's cover this. In the time since he's had a razor close decision with Arman, Charles Oliveira has beaten Michael Chandler pretty clearly, 50-40 or 49-46. That last round where he got hurt was caused by an eye poke. Ilia Topuria, he lost to Ilia. By the way, nightmare matchup for Ilia supposed to be Arman. I know Styles make fights, but Ilia Topuria flatlined Charles Oliveira. Didn't get put in any danger besides a kind of in heel hook, but even then, his knee was already out of it for most of it. There was no real danger. Arman got put into more submissions than Ilia did and flatlined him in the first round. Arman went to a razor close split decision with him. And then we had Mateusz Gamrot, choked him out cold, the guy who beat Arman, by the way, and Max Holloway, the guy who would have, if he beat Charles Oliveira, probably been the number one contender, in my opinion. Would be the number one contender over Arman if he had beaten Oliveira, in my opinion. And then now he has the BMF title as well. Just something to add on to his accolades. I know it doesn't really mean that much, but still. I don't know. Arman's just not that clear of a number one contender for me. And even on top of that, this is not even talking about Arman being the number one contender now. This is about him being a nightmare matchup for Ilia. In that same time that Arman has fought Charles Oliveira in a split decision and Dan Hooker, Ilia Topuria won the belt just a few weeks earlier, knocked out, and won the belt, by the way, by knocking out Alexander Volkanovski, knocked out Max Holloway, only person to ever do it, knocked out Charles Oliveira, and I assume will be knocking out Justin Gaethje in the same time that Arman has really done nothing in the division. I'm sorry. I don't see why people are pretending like Arman is like the uncrowned champion of the lightweight division when he hasn't really done anything. He doesn't have any great wins, and he's not active at all. He has the Charles Oliveira win. That's a great win, but in the fashion that he's done it, I mean. Ilia Topuria knocked him out cold, and for some reason we're supposed to believe that, oh, that was just like some big fluky boppy striker. It's because Ilia Topuria is primarily a striker. All of a sudden people are like, oh, he's a fake champion. He's ducking. Just because Arman's a grappler, they're pretending like he's the real champion. What's going to happen if Ilia knocks out Arman? Are people going to still pretend that Arman's the better fighter because he's mainly a grappler? Charles Oliveira is a BJJ guy, so I guess he's not a real grappler. Alexander Volkanovski went 5 rounds on full camp with Islam Makhachev, got knocked out by Ilia. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But maybe I'm missing something. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. And let me know if I'm just going crazy. Do you guys think Arman is the clear number one contender? Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Maybe Arman's wins are truly elite. Let's go back to Arman's wins one more time. Maybe Arman beating, let's see, who has he beaten? I can't remember. It slipped my mind. I must have been missing someone. You know what? I think it's the grappling wins over Uriah Faber, Muhammad Mokaev, Giorgio Poulas. Those are and that Dan Hooker win, Vincent Henderson grappling win. You know what? I think those are the win. Especially if he gets that win over Tony Ferguson, I think that solidifies him as the number one contender. That Tony Ferguson grappling match win in the year of 2026. I think that'll solidify him as the number one contender for sure. But let me know what you guys think. Leave your reactions in the comments below. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm right. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. Peace out.